Welcome to the Lounge Lizards podcast. It's so good to have you here. It's a leisure and lifestyle podcast founded on our love of premium cigars, as well as whiskey, travel, food, work, and whatever else we feel like getting into. My name is Gizmo, and tonight I'm joined by Rooster, Pooba, Senator, Pagoda, Grinder, and Bam Bam, a full house of lizards. And our plan is to smoke a cigar, drink some beer, talk about life, and of course, have some laughs. So take this as your 82nd official invitation to join us and become a card-carrying lounge lizard. Plan to meet us here once a week. We're going to smoke a Cuban cigar tonight, share our thoughts on it, and give you our formal lizard rating. We debate the impact of Cuban factory codes on cigar quality. We do a deep dive on Belgian beer, and we present a conspiracy theory about the release of this cigar and the Cohiba Behike, all among a variety of other things for the next 90 minutes. So sit back, get your favorite drink, light up a cigar, and enjoy as we pair Ommegang Hennepin Belgian-style Farmhouse Saison with the Partagás Series E No. 2. A Robusto extra from Partagás tonight on the pod, the Series E No. 2. It's 54 ring gauge by 5.5 inches. Mm-hmm. The factory name is the Duke, which we've talked about before. We did the Duke Regional
Punch.
And another popular one in the same exact size is the Bolivar Soberanos. Mm-hmm. It's identical, but this is actually the only regular production cigar out of the Habanos catalog that is made in this exact size.
Very cool.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
But beautiful cigar, boys. We love Partagás on the pod.
We do.
Big fans.
Alphabet series are all legendary cigars.
They are. All right, let's cut this thing. So we're getting on the cold draw on the wrapper. I haven't had an E2 in a while. Kind of fallen out of love with bigger ring gauge cigars, which is no secret. But I know you guys think I'm crazy. We'll see how this goes tonight.
Nice cold draw.
Cold draw is great.
I have never had a bad E2.
Same.
I have not either.
I've had a lot of them.
Same.
Yeah.
I just don't love the mouthfeel of that ring gauge. You know?
A lot of directions I can go with that.
So what are you guys getting on the cold draw?
A slight dessert notes I'm getting.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
A little vanilla, a little cedar maybe?
Cedar, yeah.
Definitely cedar.
Like sweet cedar.
It's pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it tastes like a humidor.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Let's light this thing. The Partagás Series E No. 2 out of Cuba. Again, it's 54 ring gauge by 5.5 inches long. Beautiful cigar. Dark oily wrapper. And I've been actually really looking forward to this cigar on the pod. You know, we've done a lot of Partagás. Certainly, I think it's the cigar, the marca that we've done the most cigars from.
It takes a while to light it with your single flame lighter.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It's called a number 2, but it's not a pyramid.
It is not.
Yeah, that's what's actually bizarre to me. There's only this and there's a Bolivar No. 2 are like the only ones that are not pyramids. Let me look this up because I was looking at this. I don't know why they create this. We know why they create confusion. That's what Habanos SA does. But it's the Bolivar Especiales No. 2. That and this are the only No. 2s that are not pyramids.
Is that a regular production Bolivar?
I'm not sure. It's a Lancero, actually.
That can't
Wow.
be. That can't be in regular production.
Maybe it's
I
not.
haven't seen that.
I've never heard of that.
Bolivar Lancero.
Bolivar Especiales No. 2. Look it up. It's Lancero.
I will.
Because, Monte Cristo makes an Especiales. That's
It's like
is
a.
that a Lancero?
It's a Lancero.
Lancero.
Yeah, we should do it. This is really nice on the light, boys.
This is awesome. I've never had an E2.
Really? Wow. You're in for a treat.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
The thing that Senator always says is that when he wants to be a chimney after a rough day, this is the cigar you go to.
This is a cigar every single time. I mean, for me, I'm not in Giz's camp where I don't like. I think you kind of dislike 54 ring gauge sticks. I don't feel that way, but where I guess we have something in common is I don't reach for them as often as I do Robustos or other sizes. But after a long day, when you just want a lot of smoke output, this, a QD54, anything 54 ring gauge, you really get that. But for some reason, to me, the Partagás E2, I get the most combustion of any 54 ring
We
gauge.
just lit up and the room is already full of smoke.
Yeah.
And that's not a lie.
Yeah.
It's right here.
It's definitely.
For the listener, it's full of smoke.
Yeah, this is definitely.
This
chimney
cigar
time.
right away brings me to Puba's deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
yeah.
that evening we played golf when we got there, and I think he had the E2s out of a 5-pack. It was a
Well, that's the funny
It was
thing.
a five.
LUB 5-pack, 14.
LUB.
So they only come in Semi Boit Nature 5 count or the 25. I've only bought them in box of 25. But like you're saying, when we were in Puba's yard, he had that 5 count. That was amazing.
But they come in tubos.
They come in tubos too.
That they
as well.
released later.
Yeah.
So
Right.
this basically the cigar was released in 2011 at the
Right.
Habanos Festival, Gizmo's favorite event every year. He'll be back every year. And when they released it, it was just the 5 count and 25 in the Semi Boit Nature. Then in 2016, they came out with the tubos in the little cartons of 3,
Cardboard packs.
15 total.
Yeah. And those guys, those
Tubos
you get
are
your hands
awesome.
on them, man.
That's the only
E2 in
E2s
a
I have.
tube is
Yeah.
super duper delicious.
That's
But
my
they're so pristine. The wrappers are perfect. There's no imperfections in the tubos, I find.
I find I don't find much of a difference here, but the
These are
something about the tube when they
touch toothy.
sometimes when the tube just makes a difference. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it's because it's so close to the cedar, because it's a cedar line tube. But I've had that experience with Epi2s. I've had good experience in tubes, and particularly with E2s, I've had good experience with tubes. Tubes
So-
are great.
on
They
the on the group today, on the Facebook group, somebody posted he was having an E2. It was a 2022, and he said it was fantastic.
I was
not
raving
surprising.
about it.
Yeah,
Not surprising.
Well,
It's
we've
been a
talked
good run.
We've talked
We've
about that.
about that. Yeah,
These young are pretty good.
yeah.
Aged to just get better.
I got to say, the presentation when Puba had that 5 count Semi Boit Nature box, there's something really classy, elegant, sexy about the presentation in the 5 count wooden box.
It's beautiful.
I just love how
You know
that
what it is?
looks.
It's a perfect little gift for somebody.
Yes.
The size is awesome. It's
Yeah.
very sexy.
Yeah, and the wooden box is cool because it's a
Yeah.
small wooden box.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
This is a revelation.
Oh,
me.
there you go.
I had a feeling you were going to love this cigar.
I'm surprised you have never had this.
Well, they're not like ubiquitous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
this cigar is not.
It's not
Especially-
It's
everywhere.
not super easily sourced. They don't make a ton of them.
Especially now.
I'll tell you what, though, I'm really struggling to pinpoint the tasting notes,
Really?
but I love them.
to me, this is the cousin of the D4. I think they're very much in line with one another blend wise. I think this is a little bit more desserty.
it's more
Sourdough.
creamy, more
That's the
creamy
thing.
and cedar. It's
Yeah.
a lot more cedar,
Creamy and a little sweeter. You
Who
don't
said-
get much spice on this
Yeah.
cigar like you do that like baking spice in a D4.
Who said sourdough?
I did.
I think that's right on the money
Yeah.
for me.
And one of the things I really enjoy, you're totally
Right?
sourdough, yeah. And one of the things I enjoy about this, say versus the P2, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole.
I was waiting for someone to
Uh,
mention that.
This,
For the listener, we had a war off air
Yeah,
last week about the P2.
Buckle up. This is about to be a 3-hour
I think it's going to
episode.
happen.
yeah, well,
We're not going to do it tonight.
well,
All
the P2 in my view is a stronger smoke. It's more Lajero heavy in the blend, or in the ratio rather. So
Agree with
the
that.
ratio of Lajero in the P2, I think is higher than it is than the primings in the filler in this cigar. And I think that this, for my palate, really it really hits all the notes. I mean, if I could kind of get more of them and easier, and if I wasn't as lazy, I would like to. But I just haven't been able to score a box that easily.
I haven't seen many of these at all.
No.
recently. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Recently.
I think I got it.
What's that?
You know those? Have you guys flown Delta?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know those cookies they give you?
Oh, Stroop waffle.
No,
That's
Well,
United.
That's
not-
United.
That's United.
Because that's what they
Those
give
are
on-
good though.
We're such losers.
The stroke
What the
waffles.
hell are we talking
No,
about?
no, that cookie's
Those are
United.
good. Those are
That's
good,
from
though.
Lufthansa, which is their partner. That's what
Yes.
I get.
Yes.
The stroopwafel is very
Oh,
delicious.
sorry.
Yes, let me correct you with my Dutch.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah,
You're gonna have to tell me how to spell that in the
The-
episode description.
it's like this biscuit. It's like I think it might be called a biscuit on the wrapper, but it's like this brown biscuit It's
Is it in a red and white package?
It is.
Oh, that's what they serve in American.
Biscoff.
Biscoff.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's on
Biscoff.
American flights.
They sell those at Costco as well.
There you go.
Those
Massive
I'm
boxes.
getting.
You're an American flyer and you didn't even know it.
I'm getting
Costco
some,
owns Delta.
Biscoff cookie.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
getting some Biscoff cookie.
I think you're totally on the money.
I like
Yeah.
it.
And with that, I think, obviously we're drinking that. We're going to have this with beer tonight, but with scotch, with beer,
Sure.
with coffee,
It's a home run.
this cigar is a home
Should
run.
we do some beer? Can we do that?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do it.
Dude.
So we're pairing with this the Ommegang Hennepin, which is a Farmhouse Saison ale. And the brewery is actually not too far from us. It's in Cooperstown, New York, where the
Cool.
Baseball
Really?
Hall of Fame is.
Nice.
And there's a little story how I got into Ommegang. So I visited Belgium for the first time in maybe 2014, somewhere around there. And I didn't know what to expect. I was not that excited to visit Brussels. I thought it would be relatively boring. I was in Paris, London, Munich before that, which I thought would be more exciting. Brussels was the sleeper for me. I think it's one of the most underrated cities in Europe. And I was with a coworker of mine who is a huge Belgian beer fan. And I like beer, but I'm not as passionate about beer as I am wine or scotch or other things. So we did a kind of beer tour through Brussels, all these amazing breweries, and I got really into Belgian beer from that trip. So I come home, and like any of us, when we go on a trip, it's like we come back to Cuba. What do we want to drink? Cuban rum. I come back from Brussels. What am I craving? Belgian beer. And so some places have some good stuff that you can buy. So I was able to find that. But I was just curious if there were any American breweries that like made something close to real Belgian style beer. And my coworker had recommended Ommegang. And there's a really cool story. So Ommegang, first the name. I mean, this is like I think Puba thought it was. What did you think the name was earlier?
What did I say?
Doppelganger.
Doppelganger. I was just joking. Yeah. I was like, what is that? Doppelganger.
So I had no idea what this even means, but there's actually a story behind this. So when the Roman emperor visited Brussels in 1549, locals lined up around the city walls and they had a celebration as the entourage passed by, and the parade became known as the Ommegang, which apparently means coming together and walking about.
This is what happens, by the way, when Senator and Grinder go to D.C. It's a big parade.
But that's what I said. I said doppelganger is double person, so two people who go, but that's the German. He's talking about the low Prussian Dutch or low German Dutch.
So then, as far as like how the brewery came to be, the Belgian breweries Duvel, that I'm sure we're all familiar with, and a bunch of others, they wanted to build an authentic Belgian style farmstead brewery. They picked Cooperstown to do it. They built it on a 140-acre hop farm in the Susquehanna Valley.
Only 140?
Just 140.
Jesus.
And their whole thing was to try to bring like true Belgian style beer produced in America. And from any Belgian beer drinkers I know, they swear this is as close as it gets. Having drank a lot of Belgian beer in Belgium, this is the closest thing I found to it. I love this. The Hennepin for me is like kind of slots year round. I love it at really almost any time. But they make a bunch of different beers. Like one of their heavier ones, it's a Belgian quad. Three Philosophers is a very good one. They have an Abbey Ale. This is Hennepin.
They do have a cool website.
Oh, really? I haven't even.
A lot of options.
They make a lot.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
What's the difference between a Belgian beer and some other-
Grinder.
Well, there's not as a Belgian beer in what though?
Well, is it?
I thought it's
a
made in
Is
Belgium.
it like a lager? Or,
I mean, here's.
So this is
Is
it's
it
most
hoppy?
Can I give like the very dumb version and then
Yeah,
you give the smart version?
Mine's probably dumb as
So-
well. I don't know.
No, it's going to be way smarter than what I'm saying. To me, the very dumb version. So I mentioned I was in Munich, Germany, right before I was in Brussels. And in Munich, I went to the Hofbrauhaus and you drink all this German beer. German beer is super light. You have to drink gallons of it to even get a buzz.
and it's warm, isn't it? Room,
No,
room
no.
temperature.
No, no,
but
no.
Depends on where you
Depends.
are in Germany.
It depends.
That's
Yeah.
true.
It's very true.
Yeah.
And so it's just very, very light, like many of the lagers that we would be familiar with. You go to Brussels, anywhere in Belgium, Belgian beer is higher alcohol. It's drank in smaller quantities because it's higher alcohol. And it's just a richer, fuller drinking experience. So like, when you pour the beer, and I remember this woman who was leading this beer tour around Brussels, and It's very important that you have like a really thick, creamy head on the beer. And there's just like so much flavor and so many notes that you get in these beers, where like a lot of other beers are like very simple and meant to just be enjoyed in quantity, right? Like you would have you would sling back like 6 German beers and you'd feel great. Like you have 6 of these, you're gonna feel.
Oh, you're gonna be
feel
toasted.
it. Yeah.
It
Oh, yeah.
it looks
would say-
thicker.
I would say that
It
There's-
seems like denser than
It is.
It is.
So
It is.
I would say the biggest difference is that by tradition, Belgian beer is traditionally bottle fermented ale. German beer is traditionally top fermented lagers. So it's a lot of pilsners. And one of the differentiators there is that these are the two countries that proliferated beer and beer culture around the world. German beer is obliged by the Reinheitsgebot, which is you can only have 4 ingredients to beer, and that's the only way you can make beer. And then they have different variations. And Germans always say, well, what's the difference of beer across Germany? Well, it's in the water. So the water from Hamburg is different from Cologne versus Dusseldorf versus Munich versus wherever, which is a little bit of BS. But
It's kind of like bagels around here.
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But Belgian beer is traditionally ale, bottle fermented, and it's as a result, a lot of the sugars get more compounded, and there's more alcohol as a result. And because of that bottle fermentation, there's a lot more carbonation, and they're not obliged by a Reinheitsgebot. So they have some more flexibility in adding different spices to their beer, for example. So that's where you get a lot of those complex and nuanced flavor profiles that he was speaking about. The fact that it's also bottle fermented just adds that extra layer of complexity, and it makes it kind of more viscous.
So they actually add flavors.
Well, they're not adding. No, it's not
The
adding
spices.
flavors,
It's
but
the
like
spice.
Spice.
they're adding different spices, or they'll put some
During the brewing process.
coriander in there, or stuff like that. So
Oh,
like
Coriander's right on the money with this guy a bit.
so
for me.
like you look at, he was talking about one of the first Belgian style breweries. It's actually Allagash is kind of like the first one
Mhm.
That's
in
true.
America. And
nice
I think those guys in Belgium say, look at we make Belgian beer. We're the Belgians. And
And Allagash has some good Belgian style stuff. Like their Belgian triple is actually very
It's
good.
delicious.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
I visited that brewery, and it's a phenomenal experience, and they are so welcoming. If you ever get a chance to go up there and visit that brewery, strong recommend. And one of the best beers I've ever had was they called it table beer, and it's not something they marketed; they just made it, and it was just this very simple. It was an ale, but it was a darker ale. It was lower alcohol. It was so easy drinking. They make a lot of different beers. The Allagash White, is that what it's called? Allagash?
Yeah, Allagash White.
That was kind of like the first beer in America that was Belgian style that really took hold, and that's still like their best. That's like their premier marca or whatever. But this saison is delicious. I mean, saisons are predominantly from Liège.
Is that what this is?
This is a saison, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Nice.
And they have I'm not really like it's of the season. I think it's really just like that's the kind of style of beer that they have. There might be specific. I think there's less of a certain kind of barley that they put in it that makes it, that alters the fermentation slightly.
I
But-
gotta say, sorry. Both the cigar and the beer have an incredibly beautiful dessert finish.
Yeah.
And they're both long on the finish. I capture the dessert note in the cigar, of course, through the retrohale, but on the beer, on the finish, it's beautiful, beautiful dessert. And I get that coriander.
You get that, and the other thing for
It's
me is
crazy.
like I think the E2 has a little bit of a creaminess, especially as you
that's
smoke it
right.
further along.
Yeah.
And this beer, I mean, you almost just like kind of swirl it in your mouth before you like really taste it. It's got a creamy finish to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. It's a
What-
fantastic pairing.
What I like about it is as kind of a retired beer drinker, I don't drink as much beer as I used to.
Mm.
I
But
love that. Retired.
I used to drink a lot of beer. What I kind of like about this is that it's hoppy, but it's not like India Pale Ale hoppy.
No.
It's like round. Like you definitely taste the hops in it, but you're not getting this like, not that like in India, like an IPA is bad. It just, I think an IPA would like almost overpower the cigar.
Yeah, definitely.
Where there's this hoppy note and it's great. And it kind of tells you that it's there, but it's so rounded out that I think it's very, very pleasant and balanced.
And I think the other thing that's missing versus an IPA is like the citrus heavy.
This is true.
Type of flavor.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, but Puba on the hoppy piece, I think it's an important note. Like that's one of the things that's like very different from, I mean, really all like European beer, but especially Belgian beer. Like you are never going to have a Belgian beer that is like aggressively hoppy. That is like the antithesis of kind of the Belgian style.
But you taste it.
You taste it a little bit, but it's not. There's nothing bitter about this. Like you're
No.
getting dessert notes on the finish.
But
you're
Puba,
getting that creaminess.
he makes a good point about the IPAs in general. You do get a little bit of bitterness depending on the IPA, but
You
I
get
would
a
not.
lot of bitterness
Yeah.
in the IPA.
I would not
This
have
is
a little.
extremely balanced.
It's
Yeah.
excellent.
But I can taste the hops in here.
Yeah.
Like
of
it
course.
tastes like an ale.
I'll tell you what,
You know?
I don't taste hops.
Not at
Really?
all.
I don't get
Yeah.
any hops.
To me, it's faint. It's not.
I don't
anything
get.
prominent.
This is this is for me. I swear, it has to be some kind of combination or ratio of the malt versus barley
Mhm.
because I think that's what drives it. And saisons are actually traditionally low alcohol, so I don't know what the alcohol is on this actually, but I do know that modern saisons are
Low
kind of
for Belgian.
This is Puba rated.
7.7.
Yeah, so it's 7.7.
That's
That's my
Puba.
point.
That's
It's like-
Puba rated.
Yeah, I mean, the like American stuff we drink is at like 3-4%.
Yeah.
So it's like this is. I mean, Grinder's right. It is on the lower end, but that just tells you how high the alcohol content can get in a lot of Belgian beers. I mean, it's not uncommon to drink a beer that's like 10-12%
11%.
alcohol,
Right.
even.
Right.
Duvel, which is my favorite. What is
That's
that?
a great beer too.
That might be 7.5
Seven.
actually.
I don't know what it is, but it's awesome.
That is the in my view, that is the pinnacle of Belgian beer. That Orval is a tremendous bottle fermented beer.
And the summer
bigger
Hoegaarden.
bottles, right?
No, they're small. They're small bottles.
But they make them all in like bigger wine sized
So
bottles.
what are the mainstream? There's Duvel, but what are the mainstream Belgian beers that are like not?
Well, the most mainstream is Stella Artois.
Yeah.
But that's
Oh,
a very,
that's
It's like
okay.
drinking.
but that's Leuven. I mean, that's not even. I mean, that's
That's
not.
a lager.
It's pissy
It's a
beer.
lager, yeah.
Lager.
And
That's
it-
like
it is one
in-
of the
in
best
Belgium.
tasting.
It's great.
lager.
I'm
It's
not
great. No,
exaggerating.
I love
No.
Stella.
Just so we're clear, I'm not exaggerating.
Mhm.
If you visit Belgium, you will not find Stella anywhere.
No.
They don't drink it. They
It's
don't
an
respect
export.
it.
You
That's
know where
all
they
they
have a
do.
lot of Stella, Bam? Patterson.
Yeah, they do.
The thing is,
But I
you
mean,
don't-
like Duvel, like traditional Belgian. Like if
So
you
I
went
would
to
say-
Pastis, they have. I remember at Pastis.
Hey,
they
I
would
was
have-
born in
they would
Patterson,
have
man.
Duvel on tap.
I'm a P-Town man.
Hoegaarden in the summer.
The famous Belgian bistro
Yeah,
in Chelsea. I remember they'd have Duvel on tap. But what are the other ones that people?
I
drink?
would say Grimbergen's pretty popular.
Well, there's one we're missing that's like just almost as popular as Duvel. Chimay.
Chimay.
Chimay is
obviously.
Oh,
like
that one.
everywhere. You see
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Chimay is
everywhere.
probably the Chimay Blue is a very like premier brand, but Duvel or Val
Delirium.
Grimberger. Delirium is actually wonderful because it's a newer brewery newer. It's still like
So-
1970s or something.
Funny thing about Delirium. So when you're in Brussels, Delirium has this
that's
like
the best.
huge, like
It's a complex. It's a
it
maze
is.
actually. It's
I don't
actually
know
a
if you
maze.
should call it a bar. I mean, it's just it's
a maze.
insane. It has got the single largest collection of distinct beers of anywhere in the world.
That's cool.
I went there when I was in Brussels. It's unbelievable.
Awesome.
You will never seen more different beers anywhere. It's
And
it's crazy.
it's the funny thing is for how much acclaim it gets, you go there and it's not like it's a tourist trap.
no, you're right.
It's like it was oddly low crowds, and everyone's telling us to go there, and I'm showing like, okay, it's gonna be like the worst, and it was like so chill. We were sitting in this alleyway outside of it. I'm like, this is so inconspicuous. It's so low key, and I think that adds to the appeal of the experience as well. But Delirium makes a wonderful beer. The Tremens is so freaking good.
That was
And
rated number
And
one.
is that that's like an older Belgian beer?
it's a newer brewery, newer-ish, but it's definitely a very traditional Belgian style.
And rated
Because the
number one.
the name seems so modern.
Oh, it
Delirium.
was Latin. Yeah, I mean,
No, but I mean, I don't know. It just seems like it would be. But yeah, so that's been around for a while.
Not as long as some of these others.
I mean,
but
the traditional Belgian brands that I mentioned,
Like Duvel's been
they
around
were
forever.
they've been around when they were abbeys and monasteries. I mean,
Right,
they were
right.
that's where all the money was going, and they would also brew the beer for the population.
So like, is Duvel still like? Is it still privately owned, or is it part of? It's got to be
No,
big,
I
some
think it's
big,
owned.
huge
I think it
conglomerate
might
because
be
it's so
owned-
widely
it might,
distributed.
It might be owned by AB. I'm not sure.
By Anheuser
Or
Busch.
if not, it's not AB actually. I don't know.
InBev?
AB and
InBev, probably.
Someone was telling me, I forget who it was. Maybe it was you, Senator, that one of the hardest things to do in making beer is when you're making beer in these large quantities and to be consistent. with
American
making
light
it.
beer, because you cannot hide it with other ingredients,
Right.
It's pure.
and it has to be consistent.
Right.
Yeah, you can't. When you have that, and it's a very specific alcohol content. Yeah, you have
minimal ingredients.
But
It
like,
makes sense.
would it like a brand like Duvel? I mean, they at scale, it's probably pretty hard to make.
I mean, no,
yeah.
this.
Well, I mean,
they're all hard to make, but what we were saying on another episode about light beer is harder to make. Like this stuff is easier,
Sure.
but it's still not easy, right?
Still
It's
not easy.
difficult.
I would
Yeah.
say on scale they can certainly do it, but you're displacing some of the traditional supply chain operations because you're bottle fermenting the beer as opposed to using large industrial vats.
The last thing I want to say about Belgian beer, and then we should get back to the cigar.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that this ties to a topic we've talked about on a prior episode that I very much appreciated is as I'm going on this beer tour through Brussels, the woman leading it was militant, and you will see this at every bar you go in Belgium. You go to an American bar and order a beer, whatever the nearest clean glass is, that's what they're going to pour it in. You could order a Stella, and they're going to pour in a glass that says Bud Light on it, right? Like they don't care. In Belgium, it is like a crime you have to pour whatever the brand is you're drinking. If you're drinking Chimay, it is meant to be served in a special Chimay glass that has certain dimensions that is meant to enhance the aroma and make sure the beer opens up in exactly the right way, not too much or too little. All of their beers, like they're huge on stemware, and they're in these beautiful glasses. Like they're not.
They're
like,
taking it seriously.
They are. That's the
Senator
thing.
was at
Do you know
home.
why? Do you know why? Because back in the day, in the 13, 14, and 1500s, they couldn't rely on a sophisticated supply chain. So you had these fat monks making their own fucking glasses. And as a result, the brand of the glassware, they developed their own specific glassware and stemware. So that was associated with this Saison from Liège or this lager from Leuven or whatever. So they had very specific, monastery branded glasses. But then that transformed itself into like, oh, but it's, we're amplifying this, we're doing this.
Because it has utility. I mean, that's the thing. Like for me, as I'm experiencing all this and tasting these beers, like if you pour a lager in a glass, there's no tremendous nose that you get from a lager, right? A lager is a pretty straightforward,
Oh, I love it though.
smelling and tasting beer.
I love a good.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying it's a straightforward beer. These Belgian beers have so much flavor, and the aroma that you get, it's like a wine glass almost. You're drinking them out of, and so you're able to have that more sensory experience that accentuates.
This is a complex beer.
I get
not
that.
a straightforward
I get
beer.
everything you just said out of
Yeah.
a red Solo cup. No problem. No problem.
Yeah,
Gizmo's out.
I think, in my view, I think the whole, I think it's a little gimmicky. In my view, I don't think it really does that much. I think if it does anything, it's so minute, but it's fun and it's part of the experience, and I love that. And the Germans actually kind of borrowed that a little bit. I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg.
I mean, the Germans
like, if
drink
you
out
have-
of like giant steins.
No.
Gallons of
That's
beer.
incorrect.
They do at the Hofbrauhaus. I was
Southern-
there in Munich.
I've seen that.
The Southern Germans will drink out of large steins. We'll get but the Northern Germans drink out of small glasses, and they drink like if you go to Cologne, it's like very small glasses. It's got to be cold, and you'll finish your beer and they'll fill it up immediately, and that's their style. It has to be cold. And in the south of Germany, they're going to drink warm beer out of these large steins, and it's going to be disgusting. And there's like backwash and shit.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
Okay.
Onward. Let's get back to the cigar.
Onward.
Let's get back to something great. And We're coming to the end of the first third here of the Partagás Series E number 2. This is delicious, boys.
So good.
This is like, wow. So
Yeah,
good.
It's really incredible.
It's fantastic.
Creamy
Look at the
cedar.
smoke.
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
man.
They're amazing. It's
It's
one of my
comforting.
it's really one of my favorite
This
cigars.
is really in my power alley right now, guys.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you right now, this is gonna be
You know the cool thing about this
It's
cigar?
fantastic. It's always been
it's a very
fantastic.
it's like always been a staple, but it's very comforting because of the combustion, the way it draws. I've never had a plugged E2, and every E2 has been delicious and
I-
consistent.
Wish they made a 50 cap.
In every
The
good
thing-
cigar.
The
Yeah.
thing I love about this cigar, like, there's nothing in here that's like aggressive in terms of flavor delivery. Like, it's very medium, but the flavor is it just kind of coats your mouth, and
Yeah.
like it's so present that to me it's like, I think Puba was saying the beer is like very well balanced. To me, the cigar is really well balanced, where you're not wanting more, but you're not getting anything aggressive or
Mm.
too much. It's just
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
It's great.
Here,
It's
so I have
a
a
great cigar.
I have a question for you guys. Now, let's really narrow this down. Okay, I don't want to go into the whole portfolio, but for a listener out there who loves a D4, which we've pointed listeners to over and over and over again as a staple Cuban Robusto, what should someone who smokes a D4 or likes a D4, what can they expect out of an E2 when they reach for that? As compare contrast. I'm curious.
Just
what you guys
it's
think.
not this cigar is not quite as spicy as a D4. And when I say spicy, I mean
Cinnamon.
cinnamon, and also D4s can have a little bit of a peppery
Yeah.
note
Little
to
bit.
them in the last third. You may get there with this E2, but it's certainly not. The D4, in my view, can pack a little bit more of a punch, but they're different animals.
Yeah.
I think if you like a D4, you're definitely going to like an E2.
Yep.
I think that an E2 is this is a great cigar in the spring or the summer. It's a medium, to Senator's point. It's a medium bodied affair, and there's dessert flavors that are very forward.
Mhm.
But it doesn't really leave you wanting a whole lot. The combustion's so good, the draw is so good, the construction, the burn, and whatever the primings are that they're using in the smoke are premium.
Mhm.
I think Puba is spot on.
Totally.
To me, obviously, the D4 is my favorite Cuban cigar, period. I think it's impossible if you like a D4 not to love an E2. And to me, in the Alphabet series, the natural progression is, if you've started with a D4 and love a D4,
Mhm.
like, this is next. Like, I
Yeah.
would smoke this before I would a P2, because
Yeah.
I think what Puba said earlier, like, there's a lot more Ligero in a P2.
Mhm.
It's going to pack more of a punch. This cigar is just so even keeled.
Yeah.
Like, it offends nobody. I can't really think of a Cuban cigar smoker that likes a D4 that wouldn't like this. To me, it's
Yeah.
not possible.
From the point of view of the size, it's like the bigger brother of the D4, but with more dessert notes.
Right.
I think when I'm smoking this cigar and I'm loving it so much, and I think about my experience with similar cigars like a QD54 and how much I love that cigar, and there are elements of that cigar that sometimes it has me wanting more, and I feel like this E2 is delivering that extra that
Mhm.
that ambition that I have with the QD, where I love the QD so much, and I just wanted to drive a little harder. This is fucking hitting the
It
mark.
has
is.
a little more body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has a little more body. And that in combination, I believe, with just the
Honestly,
construction of
Mhm.
it and the size is actually.
I was about to go there.
The size is really a great size.
You get that satisfaction, I think, from the ring gauge.
You do, but I mean, what Grinder's saying, right, is he's comparing it to the QD54. They're the same exact size.
That's a
But
different
I
cigar.
agree with him. Like you get just a bit more
Sure
out
you
of
do.
this flavor wise, where you are fully satisfied,
Oh,
not
yeah.
wanting anything else.
Oh yeah.
Where the QD54, I love that too. But there are times, like Grinder's saying, like you just want a little bit more out of that cigar that it doesn't necessarily
But
have.
I also think that parallels with just Partagás in general,
Yeah.
and Kai D'Orsay.
Yeah, you're
You know,
getting
it's just kind of Partagás just delivers just that little bit more, at least for our palates, I think.
you're getting the Partagás DNA in this thing that just is Partagás, that salty, minerally balanced with the dessert flavors, and this ratio that they're putting together for this. And maybe the primings are, maybe it's so scarce because the primings are hard to put together to get it right. I'm hypothesizing, but you're getting all of that. It's delivered in just a very distinct way. It's not a P2, it's not a D4, it's not an 898, but it's got kind of all that DNA in this larger ring gauge that's delivers a lot of smoke, a lot of combustion, and it's a really really wonderful experience for me.
I think all of the cigars that he just mentioned are, you can kind of, draw a line through them all, and I think there's no exception here with the E2. I'm curious, Pagoda, you smoke a lot of D4s.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about this?
So in this one, I totally feel like, in terms of satisfaction, it may be because either it's a very long finish or my mouth's fully coated. I don't know what it is,
I think it's both.
but it feels like the flavor is just being persistent in my mouth, as opposed to in a lot of cigars. I think sometimes you feel like you're craving more. Is with the idea that it kind of has a shorter finish or it doesn't linger that long. I'm like,
I'll tell you what, I typically don't like a super long finish, but I think the finish of this cigar actually aligns very nicely with the finish of the beer. I think that's helping.
yeah.
It is a
It's
good
a
pairing.
creamy finish. That's
Yeah.
what it's delivered in such a refined
Right.
way.
Yeah.
That's what I
Right?
love about
Right?
it.
That's right.
There's a viscosity to the smoke because you're getting so much of it. I think that may have something to do with it. You're getting so much of it, and the blend is so good that it's coating your whole mouth. And I think that has a lot to do with it. We've been smoking a lot of these smaller ring gauge cigars, and they deliver that kind of like pointed. There's like a pointed delivery to those. This is just a different experience. It gives you kind of less of that. It's a great change of pace.
It makes you really like not second guess, but like reevaluate or maybe appreciate the merits of a larger ring gauge.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. Like I hope that
Absolutely.
guys in this room can relate. Like everybody knows. Like you see the photo. I'll say like I've had a long day. I'm in chimney mode, and I usually send a photo with like an E2 or sometimes a QD54. Like there's nothing better than when you just want to immerse yourself in a cigar, like in the most sensory way possible, which is just clouds of smoke billowing
Totally.
everywhere. Like this is
Totally.
what you want.
Totally.
In your head.
So
Totally.
I'm the dissident in the room, as we know this, right?
We know that.
There's no question about
Always.
that. Not always, but tonight. So I don't love how this feels in the hand.
You've run away from this cigar.
I have.
Yeah, I know.
I'll buy your boxes.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
Actually,
No, I already have dibs.
This box that we're smoking
Whoa,
tonight.
whoa! Everybody, calm down.
I got dibs.
This box that we're smoking
Everybody calm
tonight,
down.
Bam bought for me about a year and a half ago.
That's right, and they've been kept beautifully.
In a Tupper
No, in Bam Bam's tower.
But I don't love the mouthfeel of the 54. I don't love how it feels in the hand. It feels bulky to me. Now, I'm not going to look at the rating for what this is. It's killer.
Well, you
I just don't reach for it.
You have
I'm
small
gonna
hands.
I'm about
Yeah.
to I'm about to close a deal right now with this thing.
Thank you.
This is fucking great. I mean, come on. I don't like the. I'm
just
gonna,
telling
I'm
you.
going to
All right,
push
look,
back
Gizmo,
a little,
if this
man.
is
come on.
if this is too big for your small hands, we're
Exactly.
gonna get you that pipe that our friend Roberto in Cuba had, and you can smoke it from a pipe.
Perfect.
I mean,
Perfect.
Yeah, this is what to me. there's very little not to like about what this smoke delivers.
Absolutely.
I'm only complaining about just the size in general is just not for me.
It
It's just not
actually
for me.
feels very good in your hand.
Great.
I love the way it
Oh,
feels.
yeah.
It feels
I
very
feel
good.
ready to go.
reason-
Maybe,
So-
maybe you're not holding it correctly, Heesmo.
Yeah, no, but very seriously, what Rooster said, like I thought I was crazy about this, and as I was just reading like how some other people feel about this cigar, people note this, and I think this is what Rooster's getting at. This cigar, Bam said earlier, has never had a plugged E2. I haven't either. I don't know how you could even find one. They're relatively loosely packed. It's actually for how big the cigar is.
It's
That's
light.
It's light.
And that's
I'll
a
tell you-
merit.
It's
Guys,
a merit.
It's a huge merit.
Because if this were a really densely packed cigar at this size, I think the mouthfeel would be problematic. I think it wouldn't feel great in the hand.
And it would
but
be
it's
plugged.
so light and elegant
Yeah.
despite its size. I think it's actually great in the hand.
like what the most highly rated cigar is
Upman
on the
2?
podcast, like an Upman 2.
It's true.
I
true.
think some people just aren't used to handling that much girth. I don't know.
I resent the implication.
I think the most of you. All right, I'm not saying a
even do
word.
it, Bam.
I think Senator makes a great point, though. It's a great point. The construction of the cigar is direct,
It's
and
impeccable.
Its performance. But what he's saying though is a very, very good point. In that the way that I'm halfway done with this. If this is a Lancero, we'd be still in the first third. This thing burns. It's the combustion is
Look
great.
how excited he is.
The draw
I love
is
it.
fantastic. The smoke output is fantastic. The
line-
flavors are
the burn
great.
is razor
line's
sharp.
and it's
The
razor
burn
sharp.
is razor sharp. It's the performance. So, like for me, I'm saying that he's right. This is meant. It's not so tightly packed that you're like
It's by design.
fighting it. It's by
You don't want to
design.
work. You
It
don't
is
want to
by
work
design.
for this, right? Though you don't want to work for it. This
You're
is
not
to his
working
point.
at all.
You're like, I fucking had a day. I had a day. Whether it was a
It's a
fucking
classy
phenomenal day or a shitty day, this is going to be easy to smoke, and it's going
All
to
right,
fucking.
so we have to do it now. We have
Uh-oh.
to do it now.
Accountability hour.
We have to do it now.
What is it?
All right, this is going to be the question to every lizard. If you could light an E2 or a P2,
Oh shit!
which would you pick?
Come on.
We all know what the
There's
answer
no-
is.
Let's say I walk in and I have each
It's
in my
6
hand and I see you
E2s,
take
1
one.
P2.
Which would you take? We'll start with Rooster.
E2.
Booba.
E2.
Me, E2.
First time I'm
Grinder.
smoking this, E2.
Bam Bam.
I don't like the question
He
I don't-
abstains.
Just answer
He
it. I mean, how
abstains.
hard is it?
because I love both cigars.
He
And
won't,
if you have to pick one, which
one
are you
would
gonna
you
pick?
prefer?
he won't credit. He won't credit the merits
If
of
the
the question.
P2 is 5 years old, I'll smoke that.
No, if they're
Yeah,
both the
that's-
same age.
The E2.
Okay, and Pagoda.
E2.
Gizmo?
P2, baby.
All right, so like I said, you're
Yeah.
on an island.
I know
I'm just
I am.
making
You are
sure
on
that's
an
I
clear.
said that. I know I'm the sole dissident
The
tonight.
thing of
I
it
know
is-
We just
this.
need the listener to witness it.
A young
So-
young P2.
I have a proposal for you. I have boxes of P2s.
I don't have boxes of E2s to trade you. I'm sorry. Bam Bam, you were saying?
That was too obvious. I like where your head was, though.
I have like 8 tubos. That's what
what I
got.
was saying was,
We can work out a
I'll
trade.
take him. I'll take him.
I'll take them.
Okay.
We'll split him.
What, Bam, hold on. Sorry. Why is that such a problematic question for you?
it is
Our job
because-
is to pick our preferences here.
well, there's nuances in the cigar if it's an older or younger cigar.
There's the
There's
same
a lot of
age.
factors.
What
Same
part
day.
of the same
So
age
I
is
said
unclear?
E2. I said E2.
So what's your
Okay.
problem with
no,
that?
no, no.
part
I
of
was
the
just going to
discussion?
go into the whole P2 thing, but forget about it.
So I do want to understand because I know these have been out since 2011. I know Puba's definitely smoked aged E2s, and I'm assuming that Rooster has as well. 2014, 2015, 2016. I have not. I'm curious, how do aged E2s compare? This is a box from December 2020, so these are like 2.5 years old. How do these compare to cigars that you've had that are maybe
It's
4, 5,
basically
6
the
years?
same cigar, but it just kind of balanced flavors, smooth. Delivery is smooth. That's what it is. There's like, even on this one, I mean, there's no harshness on this.
No.
No, and there's some more pronounced. I think the ones that I've had, there's a little bit more pronounced flavor notes. You're just going to get a little bit more of that dessert flavor. You're going to get that, basically that aged tobacco feel where like on the light when you light it up, and then also down the stretch, you're like, whoa, Like this thing is really at it's not going to get much better than
So
this.
is it a 10% gain? Is it 15? Like, is it 20%? Like, how
20,
much?
Yeah, it's 20. They're
20%.
20% better.
Okay.
Do you think do you think there's a lot of variables in this, but do you think a smaller ring gauge cigar concentrates flavor or pronounces flavor more so than like a larger ring gauge cigar?
The
Yes.
flavor is in the wrapper.
Yeah.
No,
No, it's not.
That is not true.
We've debunked that.
And I think it really comes down to the blend. I think you're
Yeah.
looking at a cigar that when they blend this, a bigger ring gauge, they're trying to give you an hour and a half, really, really pleasurable smoke. They're not loading it up. They're not packing it too tight, like we were saying. Probably why we're not getting plugged E2s or plugged, larger ring gauge cigars that come out of Havana.
Which is a
There's
merit.
just less. There's less tobacco per.
Yeah,
it's
this isn't a heavy
it's not as
nicotine.
dense.
This isn't
It's not as
this
dense.
isn't a heavy nicotine cigar where like I've had some pipe hitting 898s.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where you're like, this is a real
It's knocking
pipe
you on
hitter,
your ass.
which is a merit in the cigar, especially when they've got age on them, and it delivers a really.
Mhm.
You got to smoke them kind of slow, pair it up with something appropriate, and boy, are they fantastic!
They're
But it's a
incredible.
but
Love
it's
the
incredible.
898.
right, but it's a way different experience than this. It's still the same DNA.
I think Gizmo's answer to that question is for me the right one in the sense that, like, I don't know why, but I feel like years ago I used to think that all large ring gauge cigars smoked one way and all small ring gauge cigars smoked another way. And I don't think that's the case at all anymore. Like, as I'm smoking this large ring gauge cigar, which as much as I love this cigar, I don't smoke many 54 plus ring gauge cigars. I mean, honestly, I have two in my humidor. It's this and the QD54.
Yeah.
That's it. But other Toros and larger ring gauge cigars I've had, like, some of them have concentrated flavor like this. Some of them I'm like sucking air trying
Yeah.
to get flavor.
Or it's muddled.
And
Yeah.
with smaller ring gauge cigars, some of them have concentrated flavors and others I feel like I'm sucking air a little bit. So for me, it's debunk this, like, they all of a certain shape or size smoke a certain way. I think it really depends on the blend. And I think it goes back to our discussion around our trip to Havana, where the blending is really like the differentiator, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about the same tobacco from the same region, and it's the ratios and the blend and all of that. And so that's really, I think, what's decisive.
100%.
Agreed. For me, this smoke, and it's kind of why I like the connoisseur, but why I really love the Upman 2. We all love the Upman 2, right?
Of course.
But the Upman 2 needs, in my view, just a little bit more time than the C2. This is a little bit lighter of a smoke to get to peak performance. It's really worth aging the Upman 2, which to me ages up as a maybe a little bit more premium than this.
I think the connoisseur A needs more time than the E2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
That's
right.
fair.
And
about
they're,
that.
they're
You're right
both
about that.
54s.
You're totally right about
Both excellent
You're
cigars.
totally right about that. But because I consider a P2, even though it's a torpedo, it's a pretty healthy ring gauge cigar.
Oh yeah.
So, but it also has very similar characteristics to an Upman, but it's got the Upman 2, but it's got a part of its DNA to it, and it performs in a similar fashion. It kind of gives you that a similar experience, but the Upman just needs a little more time. These E2s seem to smoke a lot better
When they're
at
young.
2 years,
Sure.
3 years old
Now-
than maybe an Upman.
So
2 does.
these are 3 years old, and I think they're delicious, right?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It's really good.
So here's the other thing that I think is important, and it kind of bridges every aspect of this discussion we're having, from Puba's commenting on age and what Senator said about blending and our time in Havana. This is a two-part thing I kind of want to set up here. But number one, I've held off talking about the box code on this because these E2s were actually rolled at El Higuito. These are MAR December 2020s.
Oh yeah.
So it kind of sets up a two-part thing. I want to start with specific to El Higuito, the E2s being rolled there, and what we learned while we were there, but also moving into the question of, do box codes matter that much to us anymore? So let's start with first, the E2s at El Higuito and what Danilo told us. And this is going back to the Cuba episode, Cuba Part 2, that we did of our time there, where we spoke with the production manager of Cohiba and Leguito, Danilo, and we were talking about blending and whatnot. And we asked him, because we were in one of the rooms and we saw a ton of E2 boxes sitting there.
That's right.
I mean, maybe 100, 200.
Yep.
I wanted to stuff them in a backpack. I was sitting there salivating. My goodness.
And a lot of E2s come out of Leguito.
Yeah.
Actually, I would argue maybe more than out of the Partagás factory or other provincials. But
it's interesting. Like our first trip, they mentioned that some Partagás are rolled in that factory, but we never we didn't see any.
Yeah.
So it's on the second trip that we actually saw the inventory.
And what was interesting was he was saying that you could maybe Senator can recap it better than I can. What he was saying about, the wrapper leaf on an E2 might have been a Behike wrapper that just wasn't good enough for a Behike.
He did say that. Yeah.
The blends are certainly different.
The funny thing, actually, I'm glad you said that. With the E2 especially, I mean, there's obviously a ton of variation in the color of a lot of these wrappers on Cuban cigars. I mean, some boxes of D4s, they're as dark as can be. Others, they're as light as can be. But the E2 especially, I've had a lot of these cigars. The E2 tends to have a lighter wrapper than any of the other Alphabet Series Partagás.
It's a Rosado.
100%.
And I think, like, to Gizmo's point, like, it's ironic to hear, like, actually a lot of these end up being rolled at El Leguito. Like, you think of Cohiba wrappers, like, they tend to be lighter. They're certainly not dark. And so I wonder if, like,
it's very
This
interesting.
it's a Rosado, very Rosado.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, I've seen some lighter ones.
I've seen darker ones. I have.
I have yet because
Yeah.
I haven't seen, like, I've seen some pretty dark D4s.
Me too.
I just think I think the variation.
What I'm saying is that
you'll
just
you'll
E2
never see an E2 as dark as a dark D4.
That's
I
totally-
That's what
promise
I'm
you.
saying. That's
This
where
is
I'm
the
going.
lightest of the Alphabet
This is
Series.
true. Very true.
Yeah, it's always kind of a Rosado
Mm.
wrapper on these, and I think there's something that they do, and we don't know exactly what it is, but there's something that they do to make these as good as they are all the time, every time. Who knows what it
Mhm.
is?
I just think it's an improvement in construction and quality control. And I think that this box that Bam brought tonight from Leguito is clearly, I mean, the wrappers are pristine,
Sure.
which obviously, as we've discussed, is not an indication of how the cigar is going to smoke. It's really
So here's
catering
But
to.
this is more of a limited. It's one of those cigars like an 898 that you just don't.
Mm.
They come. They're not. Yes, is it? It's part of the catalog, but it's almost a limit. It's almost a limit. It's not a limitada, but it's
It's a limited regular
It's a
production
limited
cigar.
regular
It is,
protection-
and what
production
what
cigar.
validates and proves that. So, like, if you even just look at the
I mean-
box, right, they have that little insert that is like a lithograph. It's got
Yeah.
like the
It tells you what
like
the
the
cigar
factory,
is.
all
Yeah. Yeah.
the only Partagás cigars that have that, right? So, like, the D4 does not,
Nope.
the P2 does not.
correct.
The E2, for some reason, it's part of the Alphabet Series, but it has that special
Yeah.
little insert.
Lithography.
What
yeah.
exactly?
Yeah.
What else has that? The Partagás Maduro
Partagás
has
Maduros.
that in it.
That's right.
Those are produced in a far more limited capacity than a D4 or a P2 is. And the funny thing is I think about every box of E2s I've ever had. I've never come across like a provincial factory code for these for some
No.
reason.
No.
It's always like
They're-
Partagás Factory, Leguito, like it's one of the big
That's
ones.
it.
These fucking cigars are made downtown. They're not on a farm outside of Havana. It's not happening. One interesting, I guess it's a question. So if cigars that are made at El Leguito as opposed to La Corona, I think there's a clear difference from when we took the trip to Cuba. The way they handle the cigar and the tobacco and the way they assemble it, the way they stretch the wrapper, to me, there's a difference. So it makes sense if this was rolled in the Cohiba factory that it's a higher quality cigar visually.
Well, the question I have is the timing of this cigar. Okay. And what I mean by that is this is not a slyly informed thing. But what I'm curious about is I think about the Behikes coming out in 2010 and then this cigar being released in 2011.
Mhm.
Tied to what we know from what we saw in Cuba and what from Danilo said, the wrapper on an E2 might have just been a Behike wrapper that's just not good enough for a Behike 54.
Mhm.
That's not going to affect the blend that much. As we discussed, the Cuban wrapper accounts for very, very little of the flavor.
That's right.
But the look of it,
Danilo said as much as 10%, less
Yeah.
than that.
less
That's
than
right.
10%.
But the visuals on it,
The visual,
matters.
So what I'm wondering is the timing of this cigar versus Behike versus what we know versus a lot of them being rolled at El Laguito. I'm just kind of throwing a hypothetical out there that doesn't seem crazy to me, that the timing of this is like, hey, we have all these wrappers. They're not quite good enough for Behike. What are we going to do with them? We're rolling a lot of D4 and other Partagás at this factory. What should we do with it? It seems practical.
Sure.
Given that they waste nothing, that it could be.
I'm just going to coin it. The E2 is the poor man's Behike.
The very poor man's Behike comparatively.
Without the pigtail.
So he said less than 10%
of flavor. Yeah.
because that's so contrary to what you hear.
We were all misinformed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
very.
but
I
so
don't
we talked
believe.
about
I
this.
don't know
in
if
the
I
new
believe
world.
No. So there's an important distinction because I was having a hard time, like Grinder is right now, reconciling that with New World cigars. And it was someone, I think it was Rooster, who was saying, that's true. We can buy that about Cuban cigars, right? Because the wrappers are all the same. They're all Habano wrappers. There's no like, there's a few Maduros, of course, but like there's not the variation in wrappers like there
The
is in New
seed is all
Worlds.
the same.
Exactly, right. New Worlds, we're talking about a Mexican San Andreas, a Connecticut broadleaf, a Connecticut shade. Like there's a zillion wrappers on New World cigars. And so Rooster was saying like that may not hold true with New World cigars because there is so many different wrappers. And so, yes, like Connecticut broadleaf is going to smoke a whole lot different than like a standard Connecticut shade or something else.
You would think.
But with
right.
Cuban cigars, because they're all the same leaf, they're coming from the same region and place, it is not a differentiator in terms of the flavor in these cigars. It's the blend that is the massive differentiator.
Yeah.
The wrapper's just an afterthought.
All right. So here's my next question with this whole thing is, as consumers, as smokers, do box codes, do factory codes matter to you guys as much as maybe they did in the past? I'll start by saying I'm not nearly as concerned with box codes now, especially since, let's say, 2018, 2019. I am not as concerned if they're made in a mother factory versus in a provincial as I would be buying cigars that are significantly aged. I'm curious what the rest of you guys think.
Yeah.
I agree with
I
you.
mean, to me, it's more about the date on the box, as opposed to what factory it was made. But it is a bonus if it's out of the Laguito factory.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I think for me, I'm now more conditioned to judge based on actually how the cigars look. Like it was very illuminating for us to sit there in Havana and understand that like you buy this box of cigars that maybe is from El Laguito, but it can be rolled by 15 different people, the cigars that are in there. They're just, all the rollers are rolling them and then they're just color matching them. So it's not like one or two people rolled everything in that box. So for me now, I'm more looking at how they appear, how the construction looks, and how, my odds are that most, if not all, are going to smoke really well than I am like just implicitly assuming because of a code that they're all going to be great because there
it's
could
just
be
not the case.
not a great roller.
But the attention to detail at the Laguito factory, I think that might be the
well, that's why I say I'm in between because I
Yeah.
won't lie. Like some of my best boxes in terms of how they smoke just happen to be like Laguito.
I want to
or
hear what
Partagás
Puba. I want
factory.
to hear what Puba has to say.
Well,
This is interesting.
Well, I agree. I mean, if it's Partagás or El Laguito, the odds are you're going to get a pretty well constructed cigar. Does it matter? I think it matters a little. I mean, and I think it also when you're talking about cigars that you've smoked in certain runs, going back to when Rob Eilick came on the podcast. I think what he said, I would echo, his commentary in terms of these runs. So if you're looking at picking up a box, not necessarily vintage even, but something on the secondary market, maybe it's 2 years old, maybe it's 3 years old, maybe it's whatever, maybe it's 7 years old, whatever it is. If you've smoked that cigar before, very oftentimes you're going, that was the Partagás factory, El Laguito, pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it matters a little. Is it, does it disqualify, other box codes? No way, because some of those provincial factories we've all smoked those boxes from they're good.
Yeah.
So like, there's I don't think that there's a binary kind of
I think one of the
decision
things-
about this. If you know what you've had it before and you've had a run of that, go for it.
I think
I
one of the things
think it's trial and error, really. But El Guido and Partagás, I mean, you can't deny it,
No, you can't.
right?
I think one of the things that's illuminating to me, hearing your stories about Cuba and just having a firsthand view of the operations, is that so much is predicated on personnel,
Yep.
right? So
And
like
care.
you have to think about
At that particular time period.
you have to think about like where are the best people? Where are the best rollers? Right? Is it what part of the country are they going to be located in a metropolitan area? Or are they going to be located on the fringe? Like,
So it doesn't matter where they look at. It's what factory they work at.
Well,
That's right.
yeah.
Some
Well,
of these
yeah.
people travel hours to
That's
work.
true. It's true.
well, yeah. So and what is attracting them to certain factories over others? And then what are the business decisions of Habanos?
Because I have an interesting one for you. If you look at any of these Sir Winston boxes that any of us have or have smoked, none of them have come out of the Upman factory. They all come out of one or two, I think it's two, provincials, pretty far out.
Wow.
No Sir Winston boxes come out of
I didn't know that.
Upman. So what's interesting is like, okay, is there a pair of people that their only job all day long, every day, is to roll Sir Winston's? If
Unlikely.
they have, but
Sorry,
if they
did
have
anybody
those
know
wrappers,
this? This is
No.
shocking.
No, I didn't know that.
it's true.
But it's also highly unlikely they have two people assigned to it.
I'm just
No, I know.
But
But
I
this is crazy to
Yeah.
me. Like,
Yeah.
it honestly is upsetting to me.
Yep.
Right, like Upman has a factory. You would think,
So
just like
here's
you
my
know, there's a
logic.
reason Cohiba's out of Leguido. Like they're like, this is where the best people we're gonna have roll the finest Cohiba cigars. The Sir Winston is arguably the best cigar.
Yeah.
that,
I would
that
have-
Upman makes. Like,
I
why
would
would they not
hypothesize-
have people there making? That's so weird.
Maybe it's the size of the cigar, the certain vitola that certain rollers in that factory are subject. They're experts in that.
My comparison goes to what we know about Padron with the 80 year from the 1926 series, where there's one woman that rolls every single one of those cigars, and if she doesn't come to work that day, none of those cigars are rolled. So maybe there's a human being or two or five that are at that specific area that work out of that specific factory, and that's what they make. Because the other thing too is 50 cabs of Lucy's from Partagás. Most of those don't come out of the Partagás factory. They also come out of a provincial.
It's unlikely.
but they
And
do
that-
make them at the
They do
Partagás
make some at the
That's
Partagás
true.
factory. A lot of the dress boxes come out of there,
But
but not the
in
not the 50
Cuba,
cabs.
the likelihood that that's true is very low because
But we
it's
don't
so-
know.
It's so arbitrary, and it's like Puba said, you get runs. For the listener, I'm a fairly novice Cuban guy, but I know to identify a good run, you have to smoke prior to that run to identify what a new run or a good run is. You have to know what that is. But for those cigars to be incredible at one factory and not so good at another, it's Cuba being Cuba. Really is what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
So for me, the only thing that I will say is that cigars that they make a ton of, D4s, Monty
Mhm.
4s, those I try to get closer to the mother factory if I can, because they're just making so many of them.
So what you're
That
saying,
I-
box codes matter.
Exactly. My exception is
There we go.
on really some of the high run stuff. I want mother factory.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of agree with you. And even when you look at the Lucy's, there's variability.
Yep.
There's a lot of variability in those cabinets. You get some good ones, and you get some ones that are just bummers.
Can I ask a technical question of all of you guys? So where does one go to identify where a box code comes from, what factory that it's from?
It's a fair question. I mean, some of the information is on some of the forums. Like if you go to FOH, there's various threads about box codes. And unfortunately, they lag, So there's some box codes right now that people aren't quite sure which codes are for which provincials. The mother factories are very, very clear. But the provincials lag probably a year or two until people are actually in Cuba, going out to these distant factories and seeing those codes being stamped on those boxes. So they lag. But for a historical record of it, you can find those on the various forums. FOH is a great resource for that. I have a document myself I've shared a few times on there. So, maybe that's something I'll make a nicer version of it because it looks like it was taken,
That would be a great idea.
through a potato. The photo's so bad. You can barely read some of the letters on it. So maybe I'll make a better one and share it. But that's the status right now.
I will say on box codes, I think a few years ago, all of us in this room were fairly militant about box codes.
Oh, absolutely.
And I do think that there has been a bit of an evolution, and I think it's good. It's like us learning. Like I certainly was militant about box codes. I mean, honestly, most of the stuff I have that I hold in some esteem, they're from other factories. But visiting Havana and just our experience sometimes with, like, you get a random box and you're like, wow, these are really good. And this is some random provincial factory. I think for us now, we're realizing that, like, the difference is not as decisive as we maybe once thought, and is more marginal, where, like, sometimes you can get lucky and have a great box of cigars out of some random provincial factory you've never heard of. And so for me, it's opened my horizons a bit more, and I'm looking more at how the cigar looks and feels than I am like, oh my God, it's got this coat on it. So that's the only reason I'm going to make that
totally.
decision.
And I totally, I'd echo what you're saying and what Giz was saying. And if you're in the market, and you're looking around in forums, whether it's on FOH or whatever, it is a good thing to look at what the esteemed kind of box codes and years and runs are.
Yep.
Because it does that, those are established.
It
kind
tracks.
it tracks. It's like established kind of consensus in terms of, especially when you're talking about like stuff with a little bit of age on it.
That's the key point.
So and if you go on these forums, for the listener, you will be able to find what Gizmo was talking about, some of these historical, but because they change. So
they change generally about once a year.
Right. So they're always changing. So to have these codes is a good thing. It just gives you a little bit more information so you can make more of an informed choice if you're on Bon Roberts, and you're looking for something special and you want to buy something special. Certainly that can be a differentiating factor, and it'll be reflected, by the way, in the price.
Yes.
So you will see a box of Sir Winston's, or you'll see a box of E2s, or you'll see a box of anything that with a different code and a different date, that
comparatively to something of a
that will go
age.
for a similar age,
Yes.
that will go for a higher premium. So you could have a something that's a little bit younger go for a little bit more
because it's out of El Ejido.
Yeah. And that's established, right? It's established by consensus.
So, but why is that? Why are they changing it every year? So I'm imagining that, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, that it's not like they're building new factories. So am I right?
I can answer that question very clearly. Habanos doesn't want anyone judging their purchase based on the factory it came out of. So the reason why they change them every year is internally they mark them with the codes, but they keep changing them to try to distract the consumer from being able to track it and follow it, so that you're not dismissing stock that maybe was sent to one retailer in favor of something that was sent to another retailer that has a box code that you prefer. I think that is certainly the case, but I think that the general hobby, the lifestyle, the folks that are pretty deep in it are kind of in line with us in that the box codes are mattering less right now, because the cigars are coming out really well.
Well, that's the operative thing. I don't know that we've like put enough of a fine point on this. Puba was saying, like, especially if you're looking at boxes with some age on them, I think we've all talked about how in the last few years the quality has noticeably improved.
Sure.
Right. We sat down with Osmar and some of these guys who are the director generals of these factories, who have done an amazing job of ensuring better quality control. And so I think, like, in recent years, it's not as important, the box code, because the focus on quality is so widespread now in a way that in some years it was not. And so I think as you go back, like to Puba's point, with some age, you're buying a box from 10 years ago. It may be in a time period where there were a lot of problematically rolled cigars coming out of Cuba.
Yeah.
And so you really want to know where your odds are highest that box is going to be good. So in those instances, especially, is where I would actually say I'd put more of a premium on the box code. But for recent stuff in the last several years,
Doesn't matter.
I think that's where you're able to, be a little looser in
Correct.
box
And the
codes.
jury's not out a little bit on some of those, and it's fine. I mean, it's totally fine. I think Yeah, I would echo that sentiment.
Yep.
Totally.
So here's the thing I would say, and again, maybe I'm the sole dissenter in the room,
Really?
but check this out. I'm also a discerning buyer on the secondary market or tertiary market, I guess, on Bond Roberts. When I see old stuff go up that's complete or partial, I'm very, very curious about why.
What do you mean complete or partial?
That's a separate.
They sell
issue.
partial boxes.
Oh,
but
yeah,
what
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
totally
Yeah,
separate
yeah,
issue.
yeah.
No, it's
And
not.
we agree on this.
What I'm saying is that I'm also concerned at times why that seller is selling the box.
Yeah.
Is it not a great code? Is it not great quality? Did they experience something bad in that box? I am very, very cautious.
So I agree 100%. I've said this 1,000 times. This is a fact. In my entire life, I've smoked cigars. I have never once bought a partial box that anyone has posted on any site. I've said this to everyone in this room, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying this is my opinion. I'm sure that there are guys in this room that have bought partial boxes that have been great.
Yeah.
It's just not something I want to do. For exactly the reason Gizmo just said there, to me, any box of cigars I have, if I've tried one and smoked it and it's damn good, I'm not going to sell the box.
Exactly.
No, it's
So
true.
I have a hard time purchasing from someone who's smoked one. Clearly,
Sure,
if there's
sure.
a cigar or two missing, why they would sell
I'm
it.
just-
But to me, that's independent of the code, though, because even if it's a Legito code and a guy is selling it after smoking 5 of them and doesn't want the rest, I'm still not buying that box. So that's why I'm saying to me there's separate issues.
Yeah, but what he's saying, yes, you're right, and I completely agree. What he's saying is that there's certain guys who buy 2 boxes.
That's exactly it.
That's what he's saying.
That's what I'm
so
saying.
there's certain guys who. So what his suspicion is, there's guys who buy 2 boxes, right, and then they get through it and they go, oh well,
I got to get rid of that other one.
I'm going to get rid of these other one of these other 5.
Oh,
maybe
man.
that they,
Yes.
maybe that they picked up. So
Yes.
again, I think it goes back to what we've said a million times. If it's too good to be true,
It's usually
It
too good
is.
to be true.
it's usually
Yes.
too good to be true.
Yes.
Interesting.
So it just adds another complex layer of this incredible hobby of ours.
What do you guys think of this? I don't have much cigar left to smoke.
Yeah, I'm
But it's
coming to the end
It's
here.
still incredible, though.
Phenomenal.
I just
cigar.
want to add something to the previous what we were talking about. I think since 2020, we have really seen the quality in the cigars.
I think 2018.
18.
Yeah.
I was gonna
2019,
say
2019
but
was
yeah,
great.
maybe
18. Yeah. Like
Those,
especially
those
18 was great.
cigars from 19 that we were getting in late 20, they're
Amazing.
great.
Yeah.
They were
the
they were
last
dialed in.
3 to 4 years.
for
have
me,
been-
the most noticeable was the Monty 2 of 2018. That from and the older 2016s, they weren't smoking that great. A lot of them were plugged, but 2018 on, they've been pristine.
Yeah, I've never had great luck with Monties.
We
but
know
that's
that.
my own experience.
no, I think I think that the
None
run
of us
is,
really smoke Monties that much.
I think the run
That's
is
not true.
We love the Monties, man.
I smoke a lot of money.
Oh,
Gizmo
yeah.
smokes tons of money too.
His
I do.
smoke.
Yeah.
Tons.
I love
I'd
them
like
mine,
to
too.
have a good one because when they're good, they're great.
I'll
They
give you
are
a good
great.
one.
This is burning my fingers right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, but
I-
you can't put it down though, can you?
I really enjoyed this cigar tonight.
Yeah.
I have to say, the
Spectacular.
final third, the thing I love about the E2, I talked about how it's firmly medium all the way through, but it does pick up a bit in
picks
strength
up,
in the
yeah.
final third.
A bit.
It's
And it
kinda
does
cool,
it in a
right?
very nice way.
Yeah.
Not aggressive. And
Yeah.
I love that.
And
That's right.
going back to the construction comment and the blending comment on this specific cigar, what I like in the last third is with everything you just said, but it doesn't get hot. The smoke doesn't start getting, that it has that tingly burn that's not pleasurable that some cigars have really
Mhm.
close to the end. The way that this cigar was blended in that last third maintains the pleasure of the smoke, from the start and just
Absolutely.
increases the strength a little bit.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You nub this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent cigar.
Yeah, it's super.
So, are you guys ready to? I can't pronounce the name of this beer.
Ommegang.
Hennepin.
Ommegang.
Dougal Goggin. What did I call it?
Are you guys ready to
Like
do
Dougal.
the formal liquor rating on the Ommegang? Ommegang.
Yes.
Ommegang
There
Hennepin.
you go.
All right,
We are.
Bam Bam, you're up.
So I've been begging Senator for a long time
Yes.
to bring.
He
this,
had to say that, by the way.
I have to bring this beer in because I've been very curious about it. I went on a website.
I know that feeling well.
Do you? Oh, don't even go there. I love this beer. It's a revelation of. I'm not a Belgian beer drinker, but this is a complex, delicious beer, and the flavor, the dessert notes that I'm getting on the finish. It's a beautiful long finish for me. It's fantastic. Am I going to give it a 10? For a beer, I got to give it a 10.
All right.
Love
10
it.
for Ben.
I mean, there is nothing wrong with this in it from beginning to end. I can pound 4 of these and go home and go to bed.
Grinder.
I'm giving it a 7.
What?
Whoa.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Why is
That's
that?
a surprising score.
Yeah, but he's like a
I know.
beer
He's a
guy.
beer guy.
Yeah, but you
I-
gotta cut his mic.
He's a German beer guy.
Beer
That's what
guy.
kills
So
him.
I love beer.
He's a
I
beer
love
guy.
I love Belgian beer. My favorite beers are Belgian beers. So I'm always gonna love this beer.
You're always drinking lagers, I feel like.
But I'm on I am on a Pilsner lager kick, and I'm drinking a lot of Pilsners. So that's my current flavor profile. But nonetheless, this is a great beer. I think 7's a great score. I don't know why you're lambasting my
I think
score.
Grinder's going under review. Lizard review.
I'm on a pip. I'm on a pip.
Pagoda.
Sure, it's an 8 for me. I thought it tasted slightly better when it got closer to room temperature. I think when it was really cold, it was slightly different. I preferred it when it became a little bit more, a bit warmer.
Is this a beer you'd reach for over like a Boddington's?
No,
Yeah. So for me,
Those are
like
very
I have
different
so many
beers.
other
they're
beers
different
that I
beers. They're
love.
different beers. Yeah.
Totally
I
different
love
beers.
They're different beers. Yeah.
But I know they're totally different. That doesn't change my. It doesn't change. I don't have different ratings for different styles of beer. It's how much I love that beer. Like some shine more than others, and I would reach for so many other beers over this.
Okay.
No, but it's a great beer. I think 8's a great score.
All right.
Yeah.
Senator.
Really enjoyed it.
Anything 8 and over is a great score.
Before I give my rating, I just want to very emphatically say there are different beers for different times, just like there are different cigars for different times. So, like, I say this all the time. We'll compare, let's say, certain champagnes, and guys will say, like, well, I would reach for this over that. And when they are not at all similar, when they are very different, I try to remind us that, like, they're not competing for the same space, right? To like have at the same time. Like one champagne is a lot fuller and is meant to actually be paired with food. Another is much lighter and meant to just be like an aperitif or something like that. So I would just say, like, I don't like the Boddingtons to me is nowhere near like the
No,
same
it's not.
occasion
It's
you would
not,
have
no.
this. Those
It's
are
not
very distinct
complex at
occasions.
all.
Right, they're totally different.
For
occasion.
me.
Boddingtons, like you want to just pound some beers, wonderful, smooth, drinkable, great beer. I love Boddingtons. I have no complaints there. But I would pair this with like a more, like a cigar with some really good flavor, like this has, or just something that I'm not going to drink in as much aggressive quantity.
Okay. Well, in that case, I would rate 7 other Belgian beers over this.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, you have
Yeah,
your
that's
score.
fine.
Can you imagine champagne with the C2?
Oh, it's excellent.
Where's your saber?
It's
Like you're
excellent.
talking champagne, I want now. Poop, I want now.
some Poli and Boli. What's the expression?
So as far as the beer rating goes, though, I would give it a 9. I think this is one of the closest American-made beers to any like great Belgian Saison or just Belgian beers generally. I love what Ommegang does, and I think they do have a very serious commitment to quality. So for me, this slots in a number of different places and times, and I do really like the pairing with this cigar.
I do too.
So for me, this beer was a real revelation. I don't know much about beer, as we know. I don't drink a lot of beer. I found this to be really enjoyable with the cigar tonight. I thought it paired perfectly with the cigar, and I absolutely would reach for it. I don't have the knowledge that you guys do about this, certainly Grinder, but this is definitely a 9 for me.
I can't wait to get you some more Belgian beer then.
Pooba.
I mean, I don't have. This is hard for me. I mean, I don't really have a reference point.
I know, you're in retirement.
Yeah, I'm like a retired beer drinker. I mean, so for me, like, I don't know. It's an 8, I guess. I mean, it's really good. I don't drink enough beer to really be able to do this well. So I would just, I'd give it, it's an 8 for me. And that's kind of just.
I mean, even that's praise. You don't drink a lot of beer, and it sounds like that's something you enjoy.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, it's so that's my ranking, but I don't really have much of a point of reference because I don't drink beer often enough.
So the formal liquor rating on the Ommegang Hennepin is an 8.5.
That's a good score.
That's a perfect score.
I'm glad I gave it a 10 because I think it would have brought that number down. An 8, what is it? 8?
8.5
Perfect score.
Agree.
on the nose.
There's something nourishing about this beer. I can nestle in at the North Lounge with this beer and a cigar and have a fantastic time alone without any of you guys in the room. Love it.
What are you trying to say?
Well, I'm just saying.
Jesus.
The feeling's mutual.
No. I'm just saying. If you guys didn't want to hang out and I'm with the beer's my friend.
All right, great.
I'm excited. I'm excited to further expand the beer palette of Hismo.
Let's do it.
I would like
I'm
that.
ready.
We're gonna do some Le Chouffe. We're gonna do some fucking.
Just let's get some stuff I can pronounce, okay?
You can't say Le Chouffe.
Le Chouffe. Le Chouffe.
Chimay.
Chimay.
We may.
Le Chief.
All right, boys. It's time to do our formal lizard rating on the Partagás Series E number 2. Rooster, you're up.
I'm gonna give it a 9. It's a perfect Cuban cigar, quintessential Cuban flavors, medium bodied, but so much cedar and like wonderful flavors. Kind of like a D4, but minus that spicy and not a lot of cinnamon either. But it's a great cigar, great smoke.
Yeah.
Puba.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to echo that. I is it, I can't rank it. I can't give it a 10. Again, echo what the sentiment here. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. It can slot into so many places, and the construction, the burn, the performance of the cigar, the satisfaction you get out of it all the way through is just wonderful.
I mean, it's one of the better cigars in this ring gauge.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's one of the better Cuban cigars, I think, period.
Agreed.
So I'm also at a 9 for sure. And like I said, despite what I said about size and not reaching for it all the time, because I don't reach for 54 plus, I don't really reach for anything.
That's
over
actually a high
52.
score from you
But for what it is in
Mhm.
its size
for tonight.
for tonight, for the cigar out of that box from Laguito, it's absolutely a 9. And to go back to what you guys were just saying, I mean, we're moving out of the Lanceros and the Lonsdales, and we're moving into bigger ring gauge cigars, especially for Cubans. We're going to do the Connoisseur A soon, and some other 54 ring gauge plus. So, I think this is a great starting point for that. This is certainly a benchmark for Cuban 54 plus. So we'll see how it goes. But
So would you rate a P2 a 10?
I also rated that an 8 or a 9, I think, depending on what the experience was for that specific cigar. But
I think you give it a 9.
I think I give it a 9.
Yeah.
All right, Senator.
For me, this is my favorite 54 ring gauge cigar. There's no glaring flaw in this cigar. For what it is, I'm also in lockstep, honestly, with the other lizards that rated this before me. I'm at a 9. I think Puba said if he could give decimals, he'd go a bit above that. I would too. I can't give it a 10 only because for the flavor profile that I typically chase, I would want a little bit more. And I don't think that this cigar is wildly complex that is deserving of a 10, but it is a damn strong 9. And I mean, man, just the construction, the flavor, the combustion. I mean, truly, I hope for any listener, if you like anything Partagás makes and you haven't had an E2, it is impossible that you will not like this cigar. And please pick a day that you really want to immerse yourself in just a cigar and smoke. There's no better combustion out of a Cuban cigar for me.
You can disappear in a cloud of smoke on this guy.
Yep.
No doubt.
Pagoda.
It's a very, very strong 9. A couple of years ago, I was in Montreal and went to one of those, I guess the LCDH store, and I picked an E2. It's just one of the cigars I'm very comfortable with. It's an excellent cigar, and like you said, it's like quintessential Partagás.
Awesome. Grinder.
It's a 10 for me.
Wow.
There you go.
Love it.
All right.
I use the expression revelation. For me, this hit. There's a flavor profile that I seek and that I enjoy, and this was it plus. And I don't think I'm trying to think. I've never had the cigar, and for me right now, this is top tier. Honestly, like everything about it, I just
Agreed.
love.
Totally.
I want to
Mad
buy those.
Respect, bro. It's
Like
great.
it's
I'm
so
not
good.
surprised.
Totally.
I when we were coming into this, I didn't know if you had it or not, but I was definitely feeling like this was right in your power alley.
Yeah.
For
Mhm.
sure.
Yep.
Bam Bam.
I'm also going with a 10.
Wow.
I haven't had this in a very, very long time. And, there's 2 boxes sitting in my tower. I just found tonight for what it is. I tried really hard not to compare it to other cigars. I know it's impossible to do. Early on when we were recording, we've talked about this a bunch of times. I'm trying to rank a cigar for tonight and how it's doing tonight with the pairing. It's a perfect pairing. Perfect. They both went together beautifully. 10.
All right.
10
Love
wins.
it.
Yeah.
So the formal Lizard rating on the Partagás Series E number 2 is a 9.3.
Dude. That is
and
excellent.
I think
Love
that's
this.
like spot on.
It's
So what's
elite.
funny about that 9.3 coming out, I think we've said it 1,000 times that the formal Lizard rating is never wrong. And I think that you guys probably would have put it at a 93, 94 based on your comments.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
I would have
sure.
probably been at a 91, 92.
Yeah.
And obviously you guys are, up on the higher echelon of those
But the
nines
composite
close to
number
10.
makes sense.
93, I think, is a perfect
It
cigar.
makes sense.
Perfect score for the
Yeah.
cigar.
The one thing with this cigar, someone mentioned it earlier, you can pick it up in the spring or summer. For me, this is more of a holiday time cigar because of the ring gauge and the amount of time that you can spend with it. I tend to prefer this in the fall. And I look at all of my cigars that way. I kind of categorize them as to when I want to smoke them during the year, to a degree. This for me is that type of a cigar. For me personally, that's just me.
I think the ranking's really nice.
Yeah, it is.
because it to me it slots just like under a premium up in 2, and that what ranked
Very high.
It was a
9.8.
9.8.
9.8.
98,
So I mean, I
99.
think that so this is that's high praise.
Yeah.
The only I just in closing, I think what Senator said. It doesn't lack anything. It's like the greatest experience ever, but there could be just like maybe that little smidge of a little bit more.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But
And I think
boy,
it's
oh
hard.
boy, it's we're splitting hairs a little.
Mm.
Which is why also for me, I mean, Bam brought up seasons. My ideal time to smoke this cigar is like the spring.
The spring, yeah.
And even the summer. And I say that because it's
Wow.
firmly medium. There's
Wow.
nothing
Firmly
full
medium.
in this cigar. So
No,
for
that's
me in
true.
the fall, I want something with fuller flavor. Like a P2 actually for me slots in more in the fall. That is more robust. Puba said it's got more Ligero. You taste it in that cigar. But what I do love about it is the combustion is so tremendous that like after a long day in the fall, you will see me. I've been at our North Lounge on a fall, even a winter night,
Bro.
and I just want a lot of smoke, and I'll light one of these up, and it's so satisfying.
End of the day, this thing lights up. It gives. I mean, any day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week, and twice on Sunday. I think we'd all agree.
Yeah.
It's a winner.
We're splitting hairs.
I
It's
think,
true.
but I
It's
think
true.
that to your point about it maybe needing a little more. I think this is a very intentional blend. I think it's very
Totally.
intentionally medium. It has the Partagás DNA. I think it does exactly what it was designed to do, which is certainly not always the case with Habanos. Partagás has a higher batting average for sure versus some of the other marcas. But this was a great cigar tonight, boys.
What a
Yeah.
smoke!
Awesome.
Great
Excellent.
cigar.
What a
Awesome.
smoke!
Great cigar. All right, so an 8.5 for the Ommegang Hennepin beer and a 9.3 for the Cuban Partagás Series E number 2. What a great night, boys.
What a smoke!
What a smoke.
Bravo!
Very rarely do we clap. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Keep smoking.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for joining us. You can find our merch store and ratings archive at our brand new website, loungelizardspod.com. That's loungelizardspod.com. Don't forget to leave us a rating and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. If you have any comments, questions, if you want to reach out, say hello, tell us what you're smoking, email us, hello@loungelizardspod.com. You can also find us on Instagram @loungelizardspod. We really appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week.